Hi everybody, I'm Mike Morgan, one of the woodshop safety monitors. I want to talk with you briefly about the safety procedures we ask you to follow while you're using either of our two planers. I'll be demonstrating on the wide planer, but we have a narrow planer next to it that can accommodate wood pieces up to 12 inches wide. This one will take as much as 24 in width. The business end of the planer is here. So the planer is a rotating cylinder on which is mounted a number of sharp cutting teeth arranged in a spiral pattern. So the cylinder rotates like this, and the spiral arranged teeth contact the wood in succession to give a nice, clean, sliced off cut. The principle behind a planer is that you must start with a piece of wood with one flat surface. And that one flat surface goes on the table. The cutter heads operate on the opposite surface, rotating in this direction, so they're moving this way while the piece of wood goes in the opposite direction. The point here is that you have to start with one flat surface, which you can either produce yourself or buy it from a vendor already with a one flat surface. We'll do it here using one of our jointers. So most wood that is to be planed must first be jointed on one face, which goes face down here on the table. Then it's simply a matter of adjusting the height of the table relative to the cutter heads to give you the thickness you desire on your final piece. It's not quite that simple, of course, because you need to take relatively small amounts at each pass. So typically not more than a 1/16 of an inch per pass through the device, and more commonly we'll go to 0.04 inches. A 1/16 is 0.0625, right? Get out your calculators and check that. So if we go 0.04 or 0.03 inches at a time, we'll be well within the capability of the tool. If you go more than a 1/16 of an inch, the machine will bog down or it may jam and you'll hear lots of noise. That's a signal that you've taken off or are trying to take off too much at a time. The first step is to energize the tool, and in this case we use this knife switch. Up is on. Then rotate the emergency stop switch clockwise until it pops out. Light comes on and we get a digital display. And that reading is the present distance between the tabletop and the cutter head, 1.5 inches. So if we were to start with a piece of wood initially at thickness 1.5 inches, we would lower this to something less than that, which would represent the amount of material that we're going to remove. It's important to use care in setting the initial position of the table. So what we'll generally do is measure the thickness of the piece by some other means. Use a caliper to measure the initial thickness of the piece. It's just over 1.5 inches. So I'm going to leave it set at 1.50 and make a test run through the planer to make sure we're close to the initial thickness of the board. I should not remove much material with this first pass. So now we're ready to start the machine. Turn on the cutter head and the infeed. Set the board level on the table and gently feed it in. And the machine takes over. So I did remove a little bit of material, not very much. One way to tell is to make a pencil line like this, and now I'm going to pass it through again at a slightly different table setting. The procedure is set 1.44, go. When you enter a desired setting, it overshoots in the wrong direction, then goes back. Always wait for that. Be patient and wait for it to overshoot and then return to the desired setting. Several points regarding safety. When the machine is operating, no one should be standing in line with the movement of the cutters. In other words, don't stand here or over here. So you're out of the line of fire. Another point is it's always tempting to put your head down here and see what's going on while the cutter heads are moving. Suppress that urge. It's dangerous to put any part of you in the line of movement of the cutters at any time. You never know when a chunk of knot or a little bit of a chip at the end might have gotten caught in there and could be thrown out. So always when the cutter is activated, when the cutter head is in motion, keep away from the direct line of motion through the device. When you're using large boards, and you could plane any length that will fit in your shop, you may need help to support the board. In other words, you've got to keep it more or less flat on the table, and that may require support out here and also support at the other end as the board comes out. So in that case, get some help or use roller stands or anything else you've got available to keep the board steady with respect to the tabletop. A reminder is to not remove too much material at a time. I was taking off 0.03 inches per pass, and you could still hear plenty of noise. The beast was being fed very nicely during that time. So 0.03, 0.04 is a reasonable number for most planing operations. For hardwood, probably at the lower end of the range, 0.02, 0.03 inches would be prudent. Take a little bit at a time and be prepared to make many passes. You'll get a cleaner job, one that's safer, and you'll preserve the sharpness of the teeth on the cutter head.